Hi everyone, welcome to the Tech Entrepreneur on a Mission podcast. My name is Dobbe and I'm the founder of Value Inspiration and the author of The Remarkable Effect. The guest on my podcast this week is Kahn, CEO of Anura.
We're going to put a guarantee behind it for two reasons. One, to shut those companies up. No, this is a real thing. This is not a gimmick. And number two, it's like we're paying our customers to look for things to make our system better.
This is Rich. He's been building tech companies since 1993. In 2003, while running an ad network with his wife, clients began complaining about traffic quality issues. When he discovered no commercial fraud detection solution existed, he reluctantly built one himself. Years later, during an M&A process, potential acquirers showed minimal interest in his primary business, but significant interest in this internal tool that he had developed. The rest is history. And this inspired me, and hence I invited Rich to my podcast. We explore the practical realities of identifying your most valuable product, even when it's not what you initially set out to build. Rich shares how he tested his solution against market leaders before spinning it off as a standalone company, and why focusing on measurable results rather than flashy features has been crucial to his success. And by listening to this podcast, you will learn 4 things. Firstly, how to recognize when your side project has more market value than your core business. Secondly, why solving measurable products creates stronger differentiation than market hype. Thirdly, when to build technology in-house versus partnering with others. And lastly, the practical challenges of scaling a technical business in a constantly evolving landscape. Well, hi, Rich. Thank you for making the time available today and being the guest on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
That's a pleasure. I got intrigued when I got introduced to your company, Anura, and I saw your profile. We have a very similar experience level, let's put it that way, in the tech world. Only, of course, you got a different angle there. What intrigued me is also that you've been founding a number of tech companies, and I always want to learn from that. And you're currently in the ad space, particularly ad fraud, and trying to rid the world of that. So that's always a good thing. But before we start talking about your company and what problem you're solving, what drives you? What gives you energy as an entrepreneur?
I guess because my background is much of a developer, it's always about solving problems.
Yeah.
Right. It's always I've seen like I have colleagues that have done different things in different industries where they didn't have to create anything. They just took off the shelf software, put it together, packaged it up, and did something with it. Like, I'll give an example, like, an ad agency who's going to manage Google Ads, right? They didn't create Google Ads. They know how to manage it, and their expertise they bring to the table is management skills, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't have to build anything. They already have a good source of traffic. I went the harder direction, I think, in my opinion. It's going after building something totally new, totally unique. So we have something that's unique to us, that belongs to us, and making sure it can be the best it can be, and always building that good reputation in the industry has always been a driving force for me.
Love that. So many companies these days that start something and they go for the low-hanging fruit first, and then struggle. And I always have admiration for the companies that do the hard things first, do the things that nobody wants to touch, and then create something, of course, I call it always defensible differentiation from the core, that take it from there. Love it. Well, that's a nice bridge to your company that you started from what I've seen in 2017. What was the big idea behind starting it? What was the problem that you then saw that everybody was screaming to solve, but there wasn't anything?
Let's go back a few more years than that.
Okay.
All right, so I've been in this space since '93. I've done a bunch of different startups, a couple multi-million-dollar companies that we did bootstrapping, ran processes to bring them to market with no success, unfortunately, on that side. But in 2003, my wife and I started an ad network. So I always tell people, think of Google, just a lot smaller, right? And it was a boutique shop selling traffic. And in the beginning, right around, I would say 2004, so we're a year up and running. 2004, I started noticing some anomalies and some complaints from the advertisers. They were having some issues with traffic quality. So I
Hmm.
started digging into it, and I've seen it before. I knew it was fraud. So I remember saying, I don't want to be the guy solving fraud. I just I want to basically build my business. So let me just go buy a fraud solution in the market, bolt it onto my platform, and then go about my business, right? And unfortunately, in 2004, and there was none. In fact, the first commercially available fraud solution that you could license didn't come out until 2008. So I'm a developer. We got a problem. Let's solve it. So I got rolled up my sleeves, wrote some code, solved the problem, made the customers happy, and continued to grow our business. At the same token, fraud constantly evolved, so I had to keep evolving it. And then uh, we got to a point where the company was doing really well. We had a lot of stuff going on, so we ran a full process, M&A process to try to sell the company. And I spoke to Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Microsoft, and probably a half a dozen other big companies. And it felt like they were all reading from the same script. They said, "We don't care about your ad network. You know, it's been done. We're not interested. However, we really like the fraud protection that you built inside the company. Is it standalone? And do you have clients behind it?" And I had to answer no. And they all said the same thing. Well, once you do, call us back. So then we got the idea is okay, maybe the secret, growth is that we're going to have is out of this fraud solution that we built, which was just kind of like a side product for our main company. So we went
Yeah.
out and spent six figures of our own money testing us against some of the market leaders at the time. This was going back to 2014, 15, and really ran a test to see, do we bring something different to the market? If not, why go out and build this? If there's other companies out there doing it, there's no sense in building something new. But we actually, our technology, what was different was it was more accurate, it was more thorough, and it was increasing ROI significantly more than the other companies. So we knew we had something special. So we wrapped it up, split it off into its own company, and launched it in April of 2017 as a standalone licensable fraud solution. So that's how it became
Mm.
2017. But it was, I mean, we've been building that software since 2020 years now,
Yeah.
collecting data from all over the globe. I mean, we've analyzed trillions of visitors at this point, and we think we've got one of the better solutions, if not the best solution in the marketplace.
Nice. Yeah. So it was sort of a spun out of your other company and decide sort of a pivot based on one thing.
Reluctantly, and in the beginning, it was I didn't want to do it because I knew how much work it takes to do this and stay on top
Mm.
of it. In fact, our engineering team is pumping out new updates once or twice a week just to keep up with fraud.
Yeah. I got some questions around that because I saw that also in my analysis, and I've got some other customers in the cybersecurity space, which
Mhm.
is not I'm not sure whether it's completely related, but of
We are
course
a
it's an
subset of cybersecurity.
ongoing. Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I understand now where this is coming from, and I didn't realize it was that far back. But thanks for that update. So yeah, you mentioned a couple of things here. First of all, the reluctance to do something like that, how hard it is for companies to actually solve the problem really, really well. And you already mentioned high things like more accurate. Of course, the ROI part is an essential thing on that. So, what do you believe has been an early decision that has been fundamental to the success that you're seeing right now? So, what did you do different, or is that secret sauce?
No, I mean, in the beginning, it was about, okay, so not to get too far into the weeds, but most of the competitors that came to the space were trying to solve a problem for branding campaigns, programmatic display. And why? Because programmatic campaigns are the single biggest channel of digital marketing on the internet. Banners, TV, videos, that encompasses more spend than any other single channel. So they obviously focusing on big dollars are going to go after that. Again, Fortune 1000 companies spend a lot of money in programmatic. So it was a great target for them to go after, but they didn't have to prove themselves because it's a branding campaign. So branding campaigns, how do you prove if the technology really works or really doesn't? If the solution marks a visitor as real or fake, how do you know? Right?
Yeah.
So the secret sauce to ours is if we focused on performance marketing. So we've got
Mm.
clients that run large gaming companies, right? And what they'll do is they have us protect the login credentials. So when somebody logs into their site, If it's a real person, let them log through. If it's a fraudulent person, block them. Now, if we were just a fraction of a percent wrong with 100,000 people a day logging into these systems, their phone would be ringing off the hook because people can't play their games. And they'd have a bad reputation and it'd be a news. And then my phone would be ringing off the hook. And as you can hear, it's not ringing.
No, exactly.
So we were able to play in a space where, hey, should I charge this credit card? We have a company that was selling 30,000 airline tickets a day through e-commerce, and they were having problems with chargebacks. We stepped in and they said the same thing. They said, look, if you mismark a real person as fraud just a fraction of a percent of the time, you're going to cost me more in lost transactions inside of 10 minutes than I spent with you all month. So again, we were able to prove our model was very accurate. In fact, just recently, this quarter, we announced our accuracy guarantee, which is that we are 99.999% accurate. Otherwise, we will solve the problem and give you a service credit. So,
oh my God, I'm going to have some questions around that because I love
yeah,
that.
we're the only company to be able to produce that level of accuracy, and we're the only company to put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah, that is super powerful. And I'll tell you, I'll dig into that later. But first of all, I want to dig a little bit into that, what you just said. Just by how you position yourself, kind of, yeah, of course, it always directs how product strategy is going to evolve and what you pay attention to and what you not pay attention to. And yeah, you can already see here, there's a radical difference between one and the other. The question at the end is whether there will be a couple of people in the branding and the programming campaign area right now that are starting to scratch their head and like, wait a minute, how real is this really? Yeah, because it seems to be performing fantastic, but maybe it's all by fraud. Wow. Okay. So yeah, I understand because you took that angle of performance marketing, that suddenly, yeah, these things became really important because everything that you exclude from participating helps to get your accuracy up.
Right. And look at it this way, right? We're dealing with hundreds of clients
Yeah.
that each have a different type of performance metric, right? And it's funny because I'll hear them say, well, I'm comparing one of your competitors and they need 90 days to learn my traffic. They need 90 days to tweak their algorithms to work for my traffic. Like, that doesn't logically make sense because fraudulent visitor is a fraudulent visitor regardless of the channel or the industry that it comes from. So our system works right out of the box for visitor one. It doesn't need to learn or train. Chances are you're throwing traffic at us that we've already seen through other companies. And that's one of the reasons why it makes sense, especially nowadays with AI bots and all that stuff coming out in human fraud farms.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to build this in-house. I always tell people like, look, I have some customers that, well, we're smart. We're going to build this in-house. I say, okay, great. Let's talk about the economics of that. So how many people are you going to put on this project? Because it's not a one-man project. When I first did it, 20 years ago, you can get away with it. Now you can't. It's the algorithms are changing so fast and you got to keep up with it. They're like, I'm going to put 3 people on it. I said, okay, 3 people. Then you need a data lake to store all the data that you collect. You need a processing engine. You need processing clusters, and you need to be able to take real action time with the data. So add up what it costs for your 3 resources, 3 developers. Developers that can do this type of level of programming are not cheap. Data lakes are not cheap. I mean, you can do it for Amazon and stuff like that, but you still need massive amounts of data. And then I go, and at the end of the day, you're still only looking at a very small lens, your traffic and only your traffic.
Exactly.
Like I can do this job for you that I've been doing for the last 20 years for less than the cost of one developer.
Yeah.
And it works right out of the box. Like problem solved today, not 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. It solved today. So they always talk about like when you're looking to take on a project, is it cheaper to build or buy? Like we did the same thing, like, right, inside of our dashboard, we wanted live chat. And we wanted to be able to have live chat sessions with clients that are logging into the system that have questions. They want to hit a button, get their answers really quick, and then go off and do their day. So we could have built or we could have bought. We actually decided to build it. It wasn't a hard project to build, and we did it in-house. And I'm glad we did because now you're finding that a lot of these live chat systems are taking all that input, feeding it into AI. It's getting out into the open, and now you get privacy issues. And a lot of these live chat sites are now getting sued for breaking privacy laws. So I'm glad like I said, there's times where it makes sense to build stuff in-house, and there's times when it's know where you want to spend your time and then focus on that.
Yeah, got a couple of questions around that as well, the build by partner thing. But one that I want to ask first is, in order to, because you could easily say, okay, we're in the performance marketing space, but you decided that sort of the fraud component of it, or the fraud prevention component of it, became your deep differentiated angle, right?
Mhm.
So what has been the hardest nut to crack to get that to the point where you have it today?
Well, it was kind of interesting. Like we didn't have a game plan to get there by a certain time. Like we just wanted to solve our problem, right? It
Yeah,
started off
right.
with our problem. And we started in 2005. We had launched this as a standalone product for 12 years. So over that 12-year span of developing it, we got it to a point where when we rolled it out, so we did a trial with a very well-known company in the digital marketing space, and the rants and raves and congratulatory, that they were giving us, we knew we had hit the nail on the head. So it wasn't it was a 12-year overnight success, right? It took 12 years to get to that point
Yeah,
where the product was mature enough to be able to do what we wanted it done. I can't tell you how many competitors I see pop in the marketplace. They pop in the marketplace because it's a SaaS based model. SaaS is sexy. SaaS makes a lot of money because
yeah,
cost of goods sold is light, and all you got to do is have a good sales pitch. And they pop out of the woodwork, and they're actually hurting clients' campaigns because they're mismarking real people as fraud and mismarking fraud as real people. They're actually costing them money, not helping them.
yeah, true.
And I can't tell you how many customers we've got that said, I believe in fraud detection. I'm using a fraud detection, and we noticed our revenues were dropping. We couldn't figure out why. We shut the software off and we're making more money without it. And clients are happier. But we still have fraud. Like, how do we solve that? And then they
Yeah.
come to us, they test us and realize that there is a solution that does the job.
Because the first thing at the end, and that's also why I got intrigued, is you don't even realize, like, why would there be so much fraud in this area in performance marketing? But apparently
Well,
there's a lot.
let's put it this way. I'll paint a picture for your audience so you can get an idea of the size of the scope, right? Last year, I want to say, based on best estimates, as a global society, we spent $640 billion on digital marketing.
Yeah.
140 billion, based on our estimates, and I think they're conservative, was lost to fraudulent activity. So when people say, why do people do it? It's for the money.
Mhm.
They're making boatloads of money. In fact, I did read an article not too long ago that said that the average fraudster earns $5 million a year. And guess what? They're not breaking any laws.
Yeah.
Like, we know logically that they're stealing, right? But based on how it's being done, there's no law on the books, either nationally or internationally, that says they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Now, if the authorities get involved, they'll find something else, whether it's tax evasion or international wire fraud. They'll find something else to try to go after them with to shut them down. But the second they shut them down, two more pop up. It's just, the whole goal is to protect one client. And our goal and our motto is to protect our clients one client at a time.
Hmm. Yeah.
The only way to solve this problem. I mean, and I'm looking at trying to get last year's data finalized. And we're putting out a big report. We identified for our clients last year, I think it was $2.4 billion in fraud. And we're not a huge company, but we were able to find 2.4 billion in fraud last year for our clients.
Unbelievable.
That's a huge savings
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
across a couple hundred clients.
Yeah. And imagine then what the real fraud is if you just add it all up. Wow. It wasn't, I mean, I learned something today. Now, then the thing, of course, comes, and I saw that also in my research, is okay, I know how, of course, how rapidly evolving in the whole cybersecurity space is, and this is done a subsection of that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay ahead of it? Because I mean, the company I used to work for at some point also became a distributor. I don't know why we became a distributor of, for example, McAfee software, the virus killers. Of course, you don't hear about it anymore because it's now all embedded in the OSs.
Yeah.
But that was also always a race against the clock.
Yeah.
Like you say, you shut one down, two others pop up.
Yep.
How do you kind of do that as a relatively small company?
We have built a lot of tools and processes that help us stay on top of what's going on there. We have a lot of things, and one of them is like, hey, a new operating system comes out. One of our top guys will go and try to hack around it. And now here's the interesting thing. They know everything that we look for. They know all of our rules. They know our secret sauce. and they have to find a way around our system. And once they do, they sit down as a team, figure out how to block it, put it together, and block it so that our internal people can't get around it. So that if somebody does figure out what we do, they still can't get around what we're doing. But the biggest problem that exists is that operating system. So internet operating systems are browsers, right? That's really how you operate on the internet, is that's the operating system of the internet. So you got Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and probably dozens of others, but those are the three big flavors. So every time they roll out an update, which is like every freaking month, right? They roll out a new update. We have to put it through a battery of tests to see what holes do they open, what holes did they close, what's going on. And so we have a whole system in place to keep ourselves abreast of it. And then our clients, we have a feedback loop with our clients. We tell our clients if anything ever happens where you got charged back, on a credit card, or you called a lead and the lead was no good, submit a support ticket. We want to know about it. We want to be the best solution. We want to be your partner, not just a vendor. So if you tell us, hey, I think you mismarked this one as real and it was really fraud, we get that from time to time. And what's nice about it, our technology gets a chance to look at the visitor for 1 second. And we have to make an accurate decision in 1 second if it's real or fake. However, think of a gaming company. If I let a bot through by mistake, it gets into their system, they get all this rich user behavior, gameplay data. They have all that rich data behind the scenes. Lead generation company gets to call the lead and find out if they really did fill out that form. Credit card transaction, does it get charged back 6 months down the road? We have a meaningful amount of percentage of our clients that will give us that info because they know if we see it, we can solve for it. And what's nice to know, I'm trying to think, again, we roll out updates every week, like at least once or twice a week, we're rolling out updates, sometimes more, but generally one or two a week that get rolled out. I can't think of a time where an update came that was more than like a real small fraction of a percent of our traffic. So we roll out an update. It's like, okay, we rolled out this new update. It's blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing, and affected 0.001% of our traffic. So it really wasn't it didn't become big yet. So the way our process is built, without getting into secret sauce, we're able to stay ahead of it before it becomes a big problem. Yeah. And that's really what we do. And there's times we roll out, we're like, wow, this is a way around our system and nobody's figured it out yet, but let's roll it out so it's protected. So it affects 0% of our traffic. Because I always said, if we ever get to a point where we're going to mark even a client of ours, more than 1% of their traffic is going to get changed by an update, let me know. And as a CEO, I'm going to reach out to them and let them know, hey, by the way, 1.5% of your traffic is going to be affected by a new update going out this week. Just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah.
I haven't had to make that call in the last 2 years, 3 years.
And that's of course all. And I want to get back to your guarantee right now, because at some point I had a CEO of a company called Paddle, Christian Owens, on the call. And they also have a guarantee, because they are sort of the billing infrastructure for a lot of software companies. Mm-hmm. And they say we also take care of the reconciliation and all the other things and so on. Yeah, you don't pay for what you use from our software, it's totally. We actually take it all out of your hands, and we make it so good that if there's anything happening with our system and that is affecting you, we take care of it. And I think if you have that mantra in your company, whereby suddenly you start to give guarantees, it sparks a whole different type of brain inside the engineer's head in terms of how they start to solutionize the product. And that is pure differentiation. Because how powerful is it that you can give guarantees? It's instant trust.
Yeah. We do it for one or two reasons. One, we have a lot of our competitors that say, oh, we're 99.9% active, blah, blah, and they're not. I have had any company that puts an accuracy level on their site, I have had customers come to me and say they're wildly inaccurate. They give us some feedback, some honest feedback. So we wanted to take, because I even heard one of our competitors said it was just a gimmick on our side, that we're 99.999%, 5 nines accuracy, right? Yeah. So we said, all right, fine, we're going to put a guarantee behind it for two reasons. One, to shut those companies up. No, this is a real thing. This is not a gimmick. And number two, it's like we're paying our customers to look for things to make our system better.
Let me make a small interruption here. Rich just made an excellent remark that sets his solution apart from typical SaaS businesses. The realization is not about making broad claims, but about putting real guarantees behind your quality. That change not only leads to attracting the right customers who value accuracy over price, but also creates a competitive advantage competitors cannot easily match. It's a trait remarkable SaaS companies master. They focus on the essence by challenging everything that doesn't move the needle. Secondly, they aim to be different, not just better, by creating guarantees based on measurable results. And thirdly, they create momentum by turning customers into active participants who help improve their product. And you can master these traits as well. The first step? Simply read my book. I've made the electronic version available for free. Just visit theremarkableeffect.com to grab your copy, and inspiration will spark within 10 minutes. Back to the interview.
And every time, and this doesn't happen often, but every time somebody comes to challenge the guarantee, if I got to pay them, service credit, give them a service credit on their account for them reporting, we'll call it a bug, right? It's worth it to me because now they're actively looking for it. They're getting paid for it. It's almost like paying them a bounty to help us improve the product. And every time that happens, like the last one we had, it turned out Facebook made an unorthodox change to their browser.
Yeah.
And we don't expect that. We expect, a company of that size to do things by the book, and they don't. So once they made this unorthodox change, we had to reinvent how we looked at their browser to make sure that it was working in accordance, and we weren't mismarking, real people as fraud. So, and this is part of having that guarantee. Like, I don't have no problem paying out our clients, service credit to be able to do this for us because it makes their product better. And when we roll out a change for one customer, it rolls a change out across the whole network. So,
Exactly.
protection for one is, protection for all, or I should say an attack on one is a protection for all.
Exactly. Yeah. Together at the end, you're stronger, and you create a mode there of customers that are, like you say, they're bounty hunters for you.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I'm running a mastermind with the CEOs of scale-ups, and every now and then I have this question pops up, and we do a reflection on it. Like, what would your customers cheer for and would make you sweat? Which is exactly in this ball game, because a lot of companies say a guarantee. That is something.
It's funny because we run our company through EOS. I don't know if you're familiar with EOS,
Yeah.
but just in case anybody in your audience isn't, it's called the Entrepreneur's Operating System. And it's a framework of how to run a business.
Yeah.
It's just a simple set of tools to be more efficient in running a business. And we've done this. And one of the things that they come up with is what's the 3 differentiators? And like, we have so many different things. And it's like, no, we had to boil it down to 3 differentiators. And then our advisor was also saying, and you should come up with a guarantee. And we read one of the books, like, Good to Great. And it's like the guarantee that, Domino's brought out made them famous. Granted, unfortunately, it killed, I think, 2 drivers, but, for 30 minutes or less, your piece is free. That was their guarantee. And they were all about fast delivery. They didn't talk about quality. They didn't talk about the taste of it. They just said it's going to be fast and delivered to your house. So they've been pushing us for the last couple of years to come up with a guarantee. And finally, in Q4, I had this idea of making this guarantee on our accuracy because we keep seeing in the marketplace people don't believe it. And I said, well, then let's put our money where our mouth is. And we got together, put something that made sense for us as a company and for clients, rolled it out, and it's right on our website. And people go to our site, they can actually read the accuracy guarantee.
And what has it done to your company since? Just making that, because it does something internally.
So internally, there was some pushback from the developers, like, wait a second, I'm like, but you guys, you don't understand, the quality of product you built is really good. Like, the stuff that we're building here is solid. And once they had buy-in and they understood it, it made, okay, I trusted my product. And hey, if we get a couple of extra tickets in and it helps make our product better, that just makes us better when we're starting to close more deals. As more deals come in, what are they looking for? They're looking for accuracy. So I know our clients can't go to my competitors because my competitors can't offer a guarantee or the quality that we offer. So we're picking up a group of clients that can never be wooed by my other clients for any reason if they care about quality. Pricing, we're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive. We're price fair for what we do, and I think that's right the way you do it. But we got other companies out there like, hey, I know what my competitors are, and I just beat them by 15%, and I win the business. I'm like, I don't want that business. Yeah. If somebody only cares about price, they're not for us. because I'm not going to beat on price. I'm not, I just, we're not going to win on price. We're going to win on quality, support, accuracy, thoroughness, analytics. Like we have our series of things that we set ourselves apart for. And like I said, we're priced in the middle between all the service solutions out there, and it's been doing well for us.
I can imagine. Yeah, exactly. Because then it starts to attract a whole different type of customer as well. The ones that care for that.
Yeah.
And there might be ones that say, well, yeah, things will fall through the crack, but and it's of course also why they buy it. Do they buy it for marketing performance, or do they buy it for for the fraud section? But I just love it, and yeah, kudos for that for pulling it through, because it means something. Um, Kind of going back, like you said, okay, the whole thing started to build up until 17. It became a company. So now you are, what is it, 8 years down the road. What has been the biggest challenge to overcome when it comes to, yeah, sort of, scaling and starting to scale predictably?
The hardest thing for us has been really driving in more interest in the product because it's more of an education. There's a lot of people in the marketplace that don't realize fraud's part of the game. Some people think it's bogus, like, we're just finding fake fraud just to warrant our business. But when we actually sit down and put our product to the test and they see a lift, like we got case studies from $1 billion company that they deployed our technology and saw a 20 to 25% lift in ROI overnight just by flipping on our software. It's provability. So it's the educational side of things. So I talk to a lot of people that are in the SaaS space and I'm like, well, how do you drive a new business? Everyone's like, oh, we bang the phones, old school pickup, cold calling, called business to business. For our space, it doesn't work. Cold emailing doesn't work. So what we've been doing is building a lot of content on our website, and we're the highest SEO'd company in the ad fraud space, according to SEMrush, which is great. We have a lot of cool, unique information on our site. In fact, we just rolled out a comprehensive guide on ad fraud, and I think it's about a 60-page document that talks about ad fraud, the different types of ad fraud, where it's coming from, how to identify it, what you can do about it before you get involved with a company like us. So it's a great resource for a lot of content. And then we do a lot of face-to-face at trade shows. This year we'll do close to 20 trade shows this year. As a small team, that's a lot. I think the sales team is made up of about 6 people right now. And we'll split them up and ship them out to all the different trade shows and have them talk to people face to face and educate them about the product and see if it's something that they're interested in.
Yeah, makes so much sense. I mean, people that know me, my whole business is in the sales-led SaaS space, as I call it, sales-led software. Companies that sell software through a sales team. There's of course also the product-led growth motion. And for the companies that are in the sales-led space, it isn't about the volume at the end, right? I mean, you're trying to win large companies that care about a certain quality, and we just discussed that. So it makes total sense to go to the places where they are themselves.
Yeah.
Attract the right ones so that you have a very, very efficient machine when it comes to the selling of it. Have you ever thought about going the PLG mode? Putting it on your website, starting with freemium and then moving to maybe...
I did a lot of, one of our competitors does a freemium product. We did a lot of research on this before we launched. I did a lot of reading on SaaStr. I don't know if you're familiar with the blog. Guys built and invested in over 50 different SaaS companies.
Yeah.
And he has a great article on freemium, and he doesn't recommend it. Because you get a lot of people using your system, just use the resources. You'll get a lot of people sign up for it because they want whatever the freebie is. So, a couple thousand scans a month or whatever it is. But they end up never becoming a paid client. Like you'll get some paid clients out of it, but the work is not worth it because you can't offer support because they're not paying for it. Then when they need support and you don't give it to them, they're complaining about your product and they bash you on the different news groups and in Reddits and stuff like that. So we looked at it and said, you know what? If we can't support the customer correctly, it's not worth having the customer. So from our standpoint, from everything we've read, freemium is not a way to go for a SaaS built model.
Well, it depends on the product.
Yeah. And like I said,
for some it works and for others it won't. And like you say, the point is here that you have already built in that you have to support your customers. So there is going to be ongoing communication and not a self-serve model.
I'll give you a very interesting story from a couple of years, probably 10 or 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, on a freemium model that actually worked.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all familiar with, like we were talking about, antivirus software and everything else. So this is back probably 15, 20 years ago, and that was all like, Norton Virus was out there, and you had a couple of other competitors out in the marketplace. And this one competitor signed up for my company to push out their product. And what they offered was, and to this day, a lot of people do this, but they did it in a very weird way. So what they did was they said, okay, you can download our virus protection software for free, scan your machine. If it's clean, you're good. If we find something, then you can pay for us to clean it. And they were raking in the people. But what I found out later on, this is interesting. He was racking in so many people coming in because it was free, free scan. And back then you couldn't get Norton for free. Like if you wanted it, you paid for it, but there was no free version.
No.
So here's an opportunity to like, do I have fraud? Let me check. Do I have viruses on my machine? Let me check. So you run this device, find out you have fraud, you put your credit card in, pay the $20, whatever it was, and then they will come back and clean your. Turns out it was all a farce. So it was just a big show. So in other words, you downloaded their software, everybody had viruses. And then you'd pay $20. And of course, after you paid $20, they would find no viruses on your machine because it quote unquote cleaned it. So I read the court case on this, which was interesting. So the judge slapped a fine of $7 million on them. They, in court, the owner of the company said, who do I make the check out to? Yeah, that made that much money doing it. Cut the check right then and there to the court, walked out, had enough money to go hire a team of experts, developers, to actually build the model so that it wasn't just it wasn't a show, it was actually real. Turned around, built a big company doing that same model. And they were the ones who I think started that freemium model for the virus protection companies. So he started off as a fraudster, right? If you will, got his hand slapped, paid his fine, and then went back and built it the right way, doing the same thing. So now he gave out the free software that really actually did scan your machine. And if it found it, he, instead of charging $20, because not everybody had it now, he charged $49.95. And it was able to make up the difference just by increasing the price. And so, like I said, there's a model where freemium started to work and worked really well for them.
Extreme version of fake it until you make it, right?
Oh, that's the fake it till you make it for sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, going over the 8 years that you've been so far, has there been any critical turning point where you had to sort of pivot or change direction?
We haven't had to pivot or change direction. This has been, we launched as a fraud solution. We've been continuing as a fraud solution. We have had to pivot from leaders of different departments. I'll give you an example. We had a VP of marketing that was doing phenomenal the first year he was with us. Yeah. And then year two, just too many issues outside the office that interfered with his ability to perform. And all of a sudden, all the numbers started tanking. And by the time we realized it, it was already, or the conversion rates were in the toilet. Everything was just, the growth was slowing down. It was a bad situation for the company. So we had to pivot quickly, had to let him go and go replace him with somebody new. In the interim, I took over as the head of sales and worked with the team and doubled their conversion rates, got them back up to a respectable level. And then about 6 months ago, we hired a new CRO. We found somebody that worked really well. And he's significantly increased their closing rates at this point. So now, again, we had to pivot in a situation where you have somebody, they've been with you for a year, so now they're part of the team, they're doing well, and then all of a sudden, just got to keep an eye on the numbers, because some people burn out faster than others. I don't know. And it's like, I become real loyal. Unfortunately, that's just one of my personal traits is once you're with me for a couple months, like your family. It's, I will do what I have to do to help and protect you, whatever I got to do. But one thing I had to do is pivot and just to keep an eye on the numbers.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we watch those numbers like a hawk once a week.
That's good. Yeah, exactly. So, well, talking about that, I've got a question on that. What is a metric that you actually stopped tracking that you thought was crucial in the beginning?
For us, we track all numbers. So the only thing we pivoted from in number wise is we used to track the number of deals we used to close per month. And recently we switched off of the numbers to MRR.
And why was that?
Because we were tracking, okay, like, so let's say this month we close X number of deals. We're like, all right, we did a good job, but maybe they were all small deals. So it really didn't move the needle much.
Yeah.
And then we'll have another month where it's like, wow, we didn't really hit the numbers of the number of deals, but they were all large deals, and it's like it really blew up. And so, it's one of those metrics that we just looked in the beginning because it was just, hey, we want to land how many clients a month and all this stuff. And now it's like, I'd rather focus on the MRR, what
Yeah.
really moves the needle within the company, what actually produces growth for the company.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've been finding is that the bigger the MRR deal is, the stickier the client is with
It
us.
is. Exactly.
And so now we're realizing that there's certain pricing structures that don't really work for us, and we're probably going to consider to, jettison them over time.
Mhm.
But it's one of the metrics that and it's only recent.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
It's
still
well.
peak at that number, but we don't really put a lot of weight into that number. Really, what I have the CRO reporting to us now is based on MRR.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking, I just had a long focused month, so to say, on the whole topic of unpredictable pipeline, because so many companies are struggling with that. And it starts at the end with, okay, so what are the metrics that you're following? And a lot of times people choose metrics to look good. The marketing department will take metrics that they will report on and they will always look good. The sales department, similar thing. At the end, it doesn't matter whether people are looking good if it doesn't help to make the business look good.
Right.
So I've been diving into that. And I mean, you point on an MRR and getting it forces to look into what is real and to be facing some of the harsh truth. Um, Win rates can of course be a great metric, but it doesn't have to be. It's fascinating what you're saying here around MRR, because that is at the end a number, and
Yeah.
what you're also finding that you were saying is that the higher the MRR, the stickier they are, which is meaning it's going to make a difference in terms of retention and churn and everything that has to do with that. And I
Yeah.
think it's going even further because, well, at the end, you're attracting your ideal customer, and a lot of companies already think that they have segmentation clear to the ideal customer, but so ideal, well, they're not so ideal at the end. These are the customers that buy from us. Well, in that ballgame of who buys from you, who would you like to have thousands more of? And who are the ones where you say, well, they bought, but actually they should have bought something from the competition? Because they're
Yeah.
also coming in with feature requests that actually you shouldn't be developing, that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
How do you go about that?
We look at it from when we get feature requests from clients. I mean, we're users of our own software, so we get it. And what we look at is, if it's cool and we think it's going to help the general population of our client base, it gets added to the roadmap. If it's cool and it's just one person wants it, it gets added to the roadmap, but it gets added to the end of the roadmap as like the wish list ideas. Like when we get through the ideas that need to be done, we have a little pot of like, hey,
Yeah.
maybe we could take one of these ideas and rework it, and more people will use it. So like this quarter, we're rolling out 2 new features. We rolled out one. We got one more that we should be able to roll out before the end of the quarter. Features that some of our clients, we had several of our larger clients come in and actually put it in their contract that this feature must be rolled out by a certain date.
Mhm.
It had to do with security and stuff like that, which made
Yeah.
sense. So we put them up the chain and get them done. But it's just a matter of taking a look at what makes sense from us as a standpoint. What the direction that we want to head in. Just
Exactly.
because a client wants doesn't mean we're going to build it. It just
Totally
because
true.
it just doesn't make sense to. Because like I said, if it's one client's wish and they're like, I really need this feature, it's like, yeah, but it's not going to help. We have a couple hundred clients. It's not going to help the average client. I can't put a priority on that because I have other things that are ahead of it that, handfuls of clients or percentages of our clients need up and running. So that's going to take
Exactly.
precedence.
Exactly.
And again, it's, when you go to a company, the fact that we even listen to, we want that feedback. We want to know the features people want so we can roll them in. That's awesome. And the fact that we do roll out features on a quarterly basis, that's what you're looking for. But unfortunately, every once in a while you'll get a client who just like, I got to have this or I can't work with you. And it's like, I hate to say it, but I've got a couple hundred clients to satisfy and keep happy and grow. I can't turn my wheels for one client. And sometimes we can do it, but
Mhm.
there are times when they come up with these features that we know it's going to take a while to develop, and we're like,
Yeah.
it's a cool idea. I don't have anybody asking for it. We'll add it to the roadmap. I just don't know when we can get to it just yet.
Yeah.
That's our honest answer.
And you need to be honest on that. Making a decision on a single request is no decision because you have no comparison. And
Yeah.
if they understand, if they were in your shoes and they saw the 10 or the 15 things that you got on your desk, they likely also would make a different choice.
Yeah.
So it's also about getting people on the same wavelength. The brings me back to your point that you made earlier on around build by partner. When do you decide to say, okay, yes, it's important, but we're still going to either buy it or partner for it because it's and yeah, why do you make those decisions? Or
Well,
turn it around in terms of, okay, what do you deliberately say, okay, this is going to be for us? Because you already made a point about the chat function that you deliberately decided to go and build in-house, where you could have decided buy or partner.
yeah, well, one of our developers brought it up to our attention. He's like, not for nothing, but I can build this functionality out in 3 weeks. He goes, it wasn't a big lift on our side because he had already built stuff like this before. So we already had a framework to build it around.
Uh-huh.
And because he was just, he used to do a lot of this development himself, just like, can I do this? How hard is it? And that was like his challenge. Like, and at one point he's like, can I build a live chat functionality? And he built it just for fun, you know, and just a skeleton work. It was a proof of concept basically to be able to get it done. And then when it came up, he's like, you know what? I've got, half of this project already written. I could probably finish it off and polish it up and make it ready within a couple of weeks instead of spending money buying it from and then not having exactly what we needed to do. And being that one client that says, oh, I really need to do this. Like, we just build it this way we can control it and build it out any way we want. So
Yeah.
for that situation, it was no brainer. Like 3 weeks of development for now we own the product and now we control it 100%. It made
Yeah.
sense. And then there's products like, okay, a CRM. We need a CRM to manage our business. Could we build a CRM? Sure, we're smart. We can build a CRM, but
No, no, I mean, I'm talking purely about the things that you decide to build to sell to customers. I'm not talking about
oh, yeah.
CRM.
Yeah, so the stuff we build for customers, we build what we think is going to be useful for the majority or that will be excitable by the majority because we're trying to cater to each client, but we're also trying to cater to the group. So it's always about what will the group find interesting? What will the group find useful? So I'll give you an example of a feature that we built out. So all of our data in our dashboard is summarized data because they want to know, okay, I bought a ton of I bought a ton of traffic from Google. What did Google perform? What was the average percentage of fraud? What was the average percent of fraud that had dropped over the last 6 months? You want to look at that data, but every once in a while you have a client that says, I want to drill into that source and I want to look at this campaign. I want to look at this date range. And they're looking at the data and they're like, you know what? I want to do more with it than the dashboard can do because it's looking at it from a certain angle. I need the actual transactional data. So then we built in a reporting system where they can click a button and every transaction that makes up that summarized data report, they'll get as a summarized CSV file. Then now they can pivot and do other things with it if they want to. So that was a feature that a lot of people were asking for. Like I even had one client to come up and he would put a support request in once a week. Can you tell me what this IP address scored as? This is the timestamp and the IP address and user agent so that you know the transaction I'm looking at. But how'd you score them? Because he wasn't recording it on his side. So now he built a little search functionality. He can go and put the IP address in, put the date range, hit go, and then he can quickly find that transaction and find out what we scored it as. So it alleviated, it was two things. It was twofold. One, it gave our clients the ability to empower them to do those types of searches and pull that kind of data. And number two, it reduced the number of support requests coming into our network. So for us, it was a worthwhile feature to build rather than trying to get it out, try to do anything else with it. So that's how we came up with that idea of let's do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Any examples whereby you decided, okay, no, we're not going to build it. We're going to either buy it from maybe acquisition or partner for it?
So we have a lot of customers in the performance marketing sector that do lead generation, right? It's one of the areas that we did a lot of trade shows in the lead generation space. So we landed a lot of clients in lead generation. So a lot of them want the ability to manage leads from the time they're created to the time that they sell it or the time that they use that lead. And they need all kinds of data and stuff. And we could have built it. It's kind of like a CRM, but it's a lead management platform that does all kinds of stuff. And as a developer, I'm like, yeah, we can build that. But there's so many platforms out there that people already know and trust that have been building their platforms for decades that have all the bells and whistles. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. So what we did was we partnered with them to say, hey, let's build Anura into your platform so that when a client comes to your site and wants to do all this management stuff and says, "Hey, I also want to add fraud protection," they could check a box and it's done.
Perfect.
So now a client comes to us and they're like, "Wait, I work with such and such a platform, and I need your fraud detection, and I see that you're baked into their platform. Can you set me up an account so I can turn it on?" And then it makes our life a lot easier. So yeah, there it made sense because we're
Win-win.
probably partnered with 24 different lead management platforms. I wouldn't want to even try to, so even if I built one, I'm only going to attract a small percentage of people that want to use it. And it's a whole different business model and a whole
Exactly.
different team that I'd have to hire to build and manage that. Too many headaches. Just
Yeah.
easier just to partner with them and just say, hey, add a checkbox in here for the clients, work together, do some work. And I just had another company come to us, hit me up, CEO to say, hey, we had a mutual client that wanted to use your technology in our platform. So I worked with your team to get it built into our platform. And oh my God, heads off to your team. They're easy to work with. They're knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. I look forward to working with you guys on other mutual clients. So
Nice. Yeah. That's how win-win starts. But like you
yes,
say, it often starts with a remark from one of your developers. I can actually do this myself. And I actually can do it quite fast because so when you were starting to talk about the chat functionality and it would only gonna take 3 weeks, I was like, okay, I heard this. But sometimes it works out really well, and otherwise you just should say, no, we're not gonna do this because it's just gonna take. First of all, you also have to maintain it forever, and
yes, we do.
exactly,
And the nice thing is the functionality of it's pretty straightforward. So like I said,
yeah,
our chief UI designer is like, he built it in a way where we don't need a lot of upgrades because it's all built out. Every time we come up with a new idea, he can build it in within, a simple sprint cycle, not a big
yeah,
deal, add it to the sprint. Um, and life's
exactly,
good. Like I said, it's been solid. It works great. It works on the cell phone. So like, we'll be on, be Saturday and all of a sudden somebody will hit live, used to hit live chat. Now we shut live chat off on the weekend so that my team can get a break. But they used to hit live chat during the weekends and somebody would ultimately answer it. Like, I'm like, all right, I'll answer it because I know my team's, it's the weekend. And before I got a chance to answer it on my cell phone, somebody else had gotten to it. They just
yeah,
thought it was so cool to be able to handle a client remotely and on the weekend. But now what happens is when you click on a support link, live chat will be offline, for the weekends and after hours. This way, my team they could just put a ticket in. And one thing, we're really responsive on tickets. We want to make sure we respond back within 1 business hour.
yeah. Oh, that's nice.
So
Yeah,
it's 1 business hour response time. We're really responsive, which is unheard of in our industry. And you
yeah,
get responsive people right here out of Delaware answering these questions.
nice. It goes again with your guarantee.
Yeah,
Looking at the time, I mean, I could talk for hours with you. There's so many things to want to explore. I want to kind of like end with one question. Since you've got such an entrepreneurial journey, yeah, behind you, you said, I think you said in the beginning it's since '93. Um, what would be a do and what would be a don't that you'd like to share with other tech entrepreneurs that are aspiring something similar?
sure. First one is easy. Take the chance. If you have an idea, you believe in the idea, and you really feel strong about it, take the chance. Because I can't tell you how many people I talk to that have an idea that they're like, I think I can do it, blah, blah, blah. And they hem and haw and then they eventually don't do it. But I told this to a budding entrepreneur one time. I said, look, 30 years from now, if you decide to do this and fail, you won't have any regrets because you tried. You took your shot at it and you took it and failed. If you try and succeed, obviously that's going to be a no-brainer. But if you don't even try, I guarantee you 30 years from now, you regret you didn't even try.
Yeah,
So do take a chance and do invest in yourself. Do better
sure.
in yourself, right?
Yeah, agree.
Don't hire friends. It's one thing
Ah,
to go into business with friends, right? And be partners with a friend, but don't hire a friend because when it comes time to be the boss
mm,
and you have to make a decision for the business that your friend doesn't like, they play the friend card. And I have lost good some of my best friends because I made that mistake. So I would not hire friends. Go into business with them is one thing because now you're equal partners and you're not one's not the boss over the over as long as you have everything clear cut and designed. But if you hire somebody to be an employee of your company, that's the don't,
yeah,
in my opinion.
exactly. Haven't heard this one before, but you got such a strong point. Well, thank you very much, Rich, for sharing all the wisdom. Where can people go to find out more about Anura or to say hi to you?
Sure. Say hi to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Rich Kahn, Kahn at Anura. You'll easily find me. Um, to find Anura, it's just Anura, ANURA.io or .com. Either one will get you to the site. And like I said, if you haven't had a chance, go to the site. There's hundreds of articles, dozens of different white papers, tons of resources, information, all free. Download, learn all kinds of stuff. If you have questions, support at anora.io will get you an answer. But yeah, this
Well,
is easy resource to take advantage of, especially when you're just starting to understand the space.
well, thanks very much. Yeah, this is another thing of, the what other people, yeah, keep behind, you're just making available for free, and it gives so much credibility. And then with the guarantee on top of that, fantastic.
Awesome.
Remarkable, as I would call it. Thank you very much. I'll keep following you on the next part of the journey.
I appreciate it. Thanks again.